Why is BJJ doing better than Judo? There's a couple of reasons. Let's dive into it. Now, when it comes to martial arts, and I'm also going to include wrestling in there as well, I love them. I love all martial arts, except maybe the energy martial arts. Maybe I don't love those. I definitely laugh when I see those videos of the guys that are doing the, chi energy, and then they're sitting across from like a professional mixed martial artist, and then the mixed martial artist just slaps the crap out of him. But anyway, yeah, that's funny. That's funny to me. But okay, maybe not including the energy martial arts. I love all martial arts, right? I am a judoka first. I got into wrestling after I started judo. And then I was introduced to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu probably, honestly, when I first got a little taste of it, I was still maybe early on in my judo career. But I really didn't take a class specifically for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu until I was already a brown belt in judo. And that was about 6 years ago, I think. Would have been, 2019-ish, I believe. 18, 19, something like that. If you're new to the channel, hello. My name is Sensei Cole Stanley. I am the owner and head sensei here at Student First Martial Arts in Monroe, North Carolina. And I am a facility that has only been open since January of 2026, so we're new. But man, is it going awesome, and I absolutely love it. If you're in the Monroe, Waxhaw area, Charlotte area, please stop by. Very welcoming atmosphere. I love to meet new people, have new students come in. I have new people come in all the time, which is awesome. Just on Monday, I had 3 new people that came to the class, and they loved it, and all of them are coming back tonight. So I'm very, very excited to, continue to grow, what I'm trying to build here. Big shout out to Dynamo Grappling Concepts out in Bettendorf, Iowa. So I used to train with the head instructor of judo out there. His name is Greg Humphreys. And when I was training with him, he was actually teaching at Pat Militich's gym in Bettendorf, Iowa. Now, this is after the heyday, right? This is after Matt Hughes, Tim Sylvia, those guys had already left. I don't even know if they were still fighting at that time. They might have been done by then. I did see Jens Pulver once, which was cool. But that's where I was introduced the first time to Sambo, by the way, to Greg Humphreys. But wanted to represent. Right now, Greg does judo at a place called Tarpons Martial Arts in Bettendorf, Iowa. So my Illinois people, my people back around Ottawa, Illinois, where I'm from, go check that place out. Greg is a phenomenal teacher. He's, I think, a 6th degree black belt in judo, and he's been to Russia about a dozen times. I also interviewed him on the podcast, too, on the Well-Rounded Grappler. But yeah, lots of love out there. And last summer, I was actually able to go out there and Greg let me teach. So, man, I just can't even express how thankful I am for all these opportunities, man. I consider myself very lucky, fortunate, blessed that I'm able to go around and teach at all these different facilities. Last year I taught at 35 different schools in 2025. So it's like, it's shocking to me sometimes. Now I have a dojo, right? Less than a year old. And it's, again, just feel very lucky and fortunate and blessed that people want to come and learn from me. So, thank you to all my students. So down to it, right? Got off track there a little bit, sorry. Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So there's just a lot of things that they're doing right, and they have been doing right for a while. You know, a couple things that have really helped Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the Gracie family are marketing geniuses. You know, they took a gigantic chance of entering Royce Gracie into this unknown organization at the time, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and this was their first tournament. And they wanted to tell the world that Jiu-Jitsu was the best for self-defense, and it was the best for fighting. So they entered that no-holds-barred tournament, and Royce Gracie won. Now, it could have ended up being a fad. It could have ended up being a one-off kind of thing, because in reality, the UFC was not the original people that were putting on tournaments that had different martial artists facing against each other. You know, if you go back, you know, in American history, you know, you could see people like Gene LaBelle. They were doing mixed martial arts fights back in probably the 60s, I think is when it was, you know. There's also, you know, instances where Kimura, who is from Japan, which if you don't know who that is, you've probably heard of the submission named after him. But he wanted to take on one of the Gracies in a fight. And again, I think this was in the 50s, something like that, maybe even earlier. But it was televised, and you can watch it on YouTube. But there are just a lot of different organizations that have tried it in the past. And then again, like I mentioned about the Gracies, right? I can't remember if it was Helio or if it was Carlos Sr., but he faced Kimura, right, in basically a no-rules fight, you know, back in the 50s. So the Gracies have been trying to do it for a while. And it's not exactly, I wouldn't say it's luck, but it kind of is a little bit of luck that they entered the UFC when it was an unknown organization. This was its first tournament. It was, I believe, the first tournament was in like Alabama or something like that, Mississippi. I think it was Alabama. Feel free to correct me at the bottom. You know, I've read the books, and you know, I've listened to the history. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was Alabama was the very first UFC, because no states would allow them to do it. You know, no states would allow them to have these events, right? And who knew that it would grow into this billion-dollar phenom of sports, right, that it is today. So the Gracies are marketing geniuses, right? They have shown that jiu-jitsu is very practical, it's very realistic, and it can win in both self-defense as well as in professional fighting. Now, as we follow the progress and the history of the UFC, jiu-jitsu specific champions have, you know, come and gone. You've seen these waves that have came in. The wrestlers that started to come in later on after the UFC was, you know, closer to 10 years old, they started to dominate. And you've seen, you know, champions from a whole bunch of different styles, right? You've seen karate champions that have been UFC champions. You've seen kickboxing. You've seen sambo. You've seen judo. You've seen catch wrestling. You've seen just a whole bunch of different stuff, right? And the thing is, too, and I listened to this interview with John Danaher the other day, and he was asking, or in a discussion with the person that was on this interview. I don't remember if it was Lex Friedman, but I believe it was Lex. And he asked, is jiu-jitsu the ultimate martial art and why? Is it the best one? And he went into a whole bunch of tangents, but he said something really interesting. He said that there are martial arts that are broken up into two main categories. One that has a one-on-one combative sport aspect to where you have a limited amount of rules and the people, each person in the martial art can, get into a controlled fight in a way, right? And then you have the other martial arts that are based off of theory, right? To where they demonstrate the moves, they show the moves, but there isn't really this live combative aspect. And John Danaher said, if I were to pick sides between somebody that practices martial art that's more of a theory, right, to where they can demonstrate moves against non-resistant opponents, they can, strike punching bags, strike dummies, strike bags, whatever it might be, but they don't ever get to feel that overwhelming urge or attack or whatever you want to depict it as you would when you are in a sport-based martial art that has something to where you can actually spar against somebody else, right? And it doesn't have to be grappling, right? You got boxing, you got kickboxing, you got karate, you have wrestling, you have jiu-jitsu, you have judo, you have a whole bunch of different things. Sambo, combat sambo, MMA. I mean, there's a myriad of things, right? And John Danaher said, if I were to pick one over the other, a martial art based on theory and a martial art based off of one-on-one controlled combat situations with a live or sparring aspect, he's going to go with the sparring aspect all the time. Because when you have somebody that is attacking you with a lot of force and speed and power and doing things that are unpredictable and that are resisting, it adds a completely new aspect to the game, right? Completely new. So you have to get used to, feeling somebody coming at you and trying to impose their will on you. So yes, we've proven that jiu-jitsu is effective, right? And when I was on my call with Jeff Brown, which I have that interview again on Well-Rounded Grappler, he is Colton Brown's dad. And he said that we should get on our hands and knees and thank Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for what they've been doing here in the United States. Once there was a time to where it seemed like every town in America had a karate dojo. And now, in today's day and age, it seems like every town has a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academy, right? So the marketing is there. The fact that it's realistic is there. The fact that if you do have a smaller person that is trained and you put them against somebody that is not trained, the likelihood of the trained person is going to win this altercation, whatever it may be, whether it's controlled in a sparring situation or a real street fight, right? Because of the fact that ground play and wrestling on the ground is something that people do not understand until they've actually seen and experienced what real technique and control and all the other aspects that come along with ground play, right? You know, if you have faced a wrestler or a jiu-jitsu player or a sambo player and you were brand new, even if these individuals didn't have a lot of training, let's say 6 months, it was still like you were a baby and you couldn't do anything to that person. I've been there. I mean, I'm still there sometimes, but yeah. So you got all this stuff that's going right for jiu-jitsu, right? Now the UFC has created its own expansion, its own little mini-series with UFC BJJ, which is awesome, and I support it, and I'm very happy that that's coming along, and now you're getting more and more opportunities for the jiu-jitsu players to have options to, you know, make money, to become athletes, to focus their time on jiu-jitsu specifically, and to, you know, potentially maybe make a living. But does that mean jiu-jitsu is better than judo? In my opinion, no. It definitely is not. Because you understand that even though Jeff Brown said we should get on our hands and knees and thank jiu-jitsu, when it comes to the origin and just the existence of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, they should get on their knees and thank judo for becoming a worldwide phenomena much earlier and being introduced to Brazil by Maeda. So Brazilian jiu-jitsu would not exist without the fact that judo was brought over to the country of Brazil by Count Maeda. Now, of course, you can go back farther, right? You got Japanese jiu-jitsu, which was taught to the samurais, and eventually Jigoro Kano took all the aspects of Japanese jiu-jitsu and turned them into judo, and you can look back farther, and they attribute the Chinese for introducing martial arts to Japan thousands and thousands of years ago. So it just, yeah, I mean, it just depends. But here's the thing about judo and why it is just not doing very well in the United States, right? Now, the people that are into it are super into it, right? And we have a very strong community as far as the belief in judo, the dedication to judo, the fact that, you know, judo is near and dear to our hearts. But man, do we got to change a lot of stuff about judo if we want it to survive. Marketing. Marketing is where judo absolutely falls short compared to jiu-jitsu, without a doubt. People need to get more eyes on judo. They either don't know what it is, or they only see the extremely high level of judo, right, to where you have Olympic caliber, super freak athletes that are doing moves so fast, so hard, so quick, so athletic. And while it looks cool, most people are very, very intimidated by that. And I don't blame them. But people need to really know what judo is, right? For all of us that are historians of judo and kind of attribute what we do to the past, judo is a physical education curriculum, right? It is based on understanding balance, body manipulation, and movement. And it's meant to be exercise, right? But it's also obviously very, very, very strong self-defense martial art as well. And again, when you compare things, right? If you look at what judo was 50 years ago, you would see less restrictions on grips. You would see a lot more ground play, and you would see a lot more attempts on submissions, which included the guard as well. But, you know, judo has kind of gone away from that. Now, my club is definitely a diamond in the rough or does not follow the normal trend of judo, right? Because I still practice leg attacks, and we practice 30 minutes a night on the ground, working on guard and submissions and chokes and that kind of stuff. We also work on pins, obviously. But what is a pin? A pin is a controlled situation, right? Being able to control somebody's body and hold them flat onto the ground. So a pin is a controlling situation, which is extremely beneficial for jiu-jitsu, by the way. So a couple other things that Jiu-Jitsu is doing very well that Judo is definitely slacking in. So this open door policy to where Jiu-Jitsu is for everybody. You can start it in your 50s. You see all these videos of, these 50, 60, 70-year-olds that are getting their blue belt or their purple belt. And you see this older crowd that's coming in there, and you pull up any video about jiu-jitsu, and it's very easy to explain, and they say, look at how easy jiu-jitsu is. All you do is you move to this position. You use this technique. Anybody can do this move. It's safe, we do it slow, etc., and it's effective, and it is effective. And anybody, yes, can join jiu-jitsu and start at any age, and I encourage people to do it because I've been involved in jiu-jitsu for 6 years myself, and I love it as well. Or strongly like it, maybe. I love judo. Strongly like jiu-jitsu, I think. But when you type in judo and you search for it, we really haven't put in the time to explain how judo is for everyone. That a smaller person can defeat a bigger person. Techniques that are broken down step by step, saying, look at how easy this is. This is step one. You can do this nice and slow. Look how easy this is. Anybody can do this, right? Jiu-jitsu pretty much took what Jigoro Kano said in the 1800s, that judo is for everybody, and adapted it to jiu-jitsu, right? But the whole statement of that it is for everybody came from judo much longer before than jiu-jitsu does today. There's been this kind of hard-nosed type of attitude with judo, right? That judo is going to weed out the weak, that you're going to just have to wipe the blood off and just keep going, and judo is super hard, and judo has all this conditioning, and judo is just for tough people and stuff like that. And that was kind of the trend for a while. And happily that trend is starting to change, right? And we have to realize that if people want to compete, that's awesome, but it's a very small percentage of people that actually compete in judo. The majority of people don't compete in judo and might never compete in judo. They might not be interested in the randori portion at all. They might just be doing it to stay in shape, to learn something cool, to experience martial arts, to learn body manipulation, as well as the discipline and, the sort of morale that comes along with judo, and how important it is and how it truly does change people, right? It really does. It definitely has changed me. Oh my gosh. It's, wow. I can't thank judo enough for everything that it's done to me and for me. And unfortunately, I've ran into individuals that really want to believe that judo is still stuck in the 1980s, right? That we practice on, hard mats, and, it's 10 6-minute rounds, and the new person that comes in has to learn the hard way, and just, it weeds out the weak. We can't, you can't teach it like that anymore. But I think, though, that I think martial arts in general have gone through those, right? Not just judo, or even jiu-jitsu did that too, to an extent, right? Look at what the Gracies used to do with that dojo storming, right? They would go in and just try to just kick the living crap out of everybody just to prove that jiu-jitsu is the best. And and then again, look what it's turned into now, right? It's for everybody. So judo needs to definitely adapt with the times. We have to, while holding on to tradition, we have to adapt judo to modern times, right? Especially if we want it to grow. Because if we keep thinking of it as just the sport, and just what the Olympics is doing, and just what high-level people are doing, and go on that mindset, judo is going to fade away, right? We have to offer these recreational programs to people of all ages. We have to have a welcoming environment. We have to use crash pads. We have to get multi-layered floor systems that are installed. We have to take judo slow. When new people come in, we have to gently introduce them to judo and allow them to walk before they run. I've heard several stories from people about this, to where I've invited people to judo, and they're like, oh, yeah, I don't know about judo. And then, whatever, either that day or later on down the road, right? I'm like, why don't you want to come to judo? Like, what's some negative thoughts or concerns that you have about judo? And they're like, okay, well, I didn't want to bring this up, but, I went to a judo club a couple years ago, and I told the people, because, the instructors were like, do you have any experience? And this individual was like, yeah, I wrestled when I was younger. I've done some jiu-jitsu, so I've been doing it a couple years. And they're like, oh, okay. So he said for the next hour, he was basically just the throw dummy for the entire club. And whenever it was time to do randori, they would just come at him 100% and just try to crush him, right? And no wonder he didn't come back, right? Because he's like, that's the last judo practice I had, my first and last. I'm like, wow, that's terrible, man. I'm sorry to hear that, because that should not be how judo is, man. It shouldn't. And, shame on that club for allowing that to happen, and shame on your club if that's the way that you run it, right? There's much better ways to run facilities and to spread judo, right? Because we have to continuously grow. So, because of the various things that I talked about, the numbers in judo are pretty low. I've heard as low as 10,000 people in the whole United States that do judo. I think that's a little low, but I've also heard 20,000, 30,000. That might be, I don't know, maybe that might be somewhat correct, unfortunately. So how do we grow judo? We have to be able to allow, these things to happen, with a welcoming environment, with baby steps, with no required randori, to, good floor systems, crash pads. And again, just a very welcoming environment, right? You know, I mean, I've been doing this a while, and I've been to, I don't even know, 100 dojos, 200 dojos, I don't know, whatever it is, probably more. But, you know, there's some that I go in and people don't even make eye contact with you, man. And it's, you know, like, I've been doing this a while, so I kind of, you know, I'm like, oh, okay, that's just how the gym is, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to train, right? That I'm still going to train. And there's other clubs to where, you know, I'm getting hugs, you know, from people the first time I meet them, right? And welcome, and we're so happy you're here and stuff like that, right? It's like, especially if you're a new person and you come into environment A, to where nobody makes eye contact with you, nobody introduces themselves, the class kind of lines up and you don't know where in the heck to go, so you just kind of guess. Or you have the polar opposite, to where you have this very friendly environment, people asking, how are you, welcome to the club, what can we get you, etc. You know, but I do think judo's going to get there. It's just, it's going to take some time, and I definitely think that, you know, this bubble that is, you know, jiu-jitsu in the United States might eventually burst. So what's going to be the next martial art after jiu-jitsu? I don't know. Maybe it's judo. I guess we'll see. Agree, disagree? Let me know. I know these are some strong opinions, but I love all martial arts. In the meantime, check out more of my material. We got one of these 2 videos that you can check out. Thanks so much, everybody. See you on the mat next time. Bye.